All right, so I've been getting some questions about what there is to do in this game, kind of, and also questions about how certain game systems work. So, obviously, with an MMO, and especially one like Guild Wars, that's kind of a sandbox experience, kind of open world experience. Um, the things that you can do are a little bit more personal or unique to the individual. Like, what do you want to do in the game? Because there's actually a lot to do, and I wouldn't say there's necessarily a hard and fast formula for how each person should approach the game. But I think just to start off, just talking about what makes the game unique can kind of help inform that the decisions on what you do in the game. Guild Wars 2 is a pretty old game now. I think it came out in 2012. I want to say maybe it's a little bit older than that. So pretty an older game now. And some of the things that it was doing at the beginning of its launch that I think were quite innovative for the MMO space have been picked up by other MMOs in the current kind of day and age. So, I might say some things and you might say, oh, that's not that unique. This game has it, this game has it. But, at its beginning, Guild Wars 2 was really setting the stage and changing the MMO genre in a big way. Um, I think the most apparent kind of old MMO system that it kind of eliminated was fetch questing. Uh, and I think fetch questing in general is not necessarily a bad thing. And I also think quest lines, in terms of like you do one quest and do another quest and do another quest, also not a bad thing inherently. But I do think that the monotony of certain games, especially when leveling is such a big part of it, and I think certain games have kind of lost touch with the leveling process as an experience, right? Versus rushing to late game, right? And obviously, even in this game, you can buy a level 80 boost. But I do think that the experience that you have while leveling is a part of the game, right? And that is something that you can do, right? When someone asks, well, what should I be doing in the game? And a lot of times it's like, well, once I reach level 80, what should I be doing, right? But like right off the bat, I would say like the thing you should be doing is enjoying the leveling process and kind of getting the most out of that. But going back to hearts, right, which is Guild Wars 2 version of questing, right? One, it's kind of like an area that you can do things in, and you don't have to go to an NPC, get a quest, go do the task, come back to the NPC. While you can go find that heart NPC and kind of talk to them, they'll have dialogue, they'll give you a bit of story and lore if that's what you're into. And in general, I think the ambient lore in the game is pretty strong. You can go to different um, uh, areas in the game. You can find NPCs that are just talking to each other. A lot of things are acted, and it gives a very cinematic experience. But when you're doing these hearts in these areas, you can kind of work your way through the map, right? So it's like a pretty big area. So you feel like you're progressing, right? And it's very subtle, right? Because but like it feels like you're the ball's rolling. And I think when you're leveling, that's an important thing to feel, is that like you're constantly moving forward. And on top of that, to combat the monotony of staying in one place, you also have the fact that the hearts usually have 2 to 3, maybe sometimes even 4 activities that you can do, that are unique to each other, that also help progress the heart. Um, and whether that's waking up soldiers who are sleeping, or training with soldiers who and you actually just go into combat with them, or collecting equipment, or get moving supplies. All of that contributes to like a diverse experience with that heart. And I think it helps. It really helps, one, with immersion. I think it really helps you feel like you're in like a real world, where actually things are happening, right? But two, also, personalization of the experience, right? And I think that's a big part. Even you'll see in character creation is like, who is my character, right? Kind of goes back to a lot of like D&D fundamentals, right? Of like when you're in an and this is honestly why I MMOs are my favorite type of genre is the personalization of my experience, where I don't feel like I am playing just a slotted in character into the game. You know, I am playing my character, right? And the decisions I make in character selection, the decisions I make in the game, right? Like if you want to be a pacifist character, well, pacifism's a little bit harder, right? But if you want to be like a you know, a lawful good character, right? When you're in hearts, you can be making decisions like, okay, I'm not gonna like kill these guys if I can avoid it. I'm going to I'm going to work on gathering supplies or something like this, right? And so that kind of goes towards that role playing experience that I think is like pretty important. Um, and in addition to that, when you're questing with hearts, you can contribute to other people's heart experience by just being in proximity with them, being in a party. I think that's a pretty big thing, right? And in general, just like having shared credit for experiences, when you participate in an event, when you kill world bosses, you're having your own personalized loot. So you're not having to fight people over like spawn timers, kill credit, arguing over who gets what loot, and you're seeing that a lot in games moving forward. I think that's a big thing in the modern age is people not fighting over loot and stuff. And I do think there's something to be said about the established MMOs having that. It's part of the social experience, right? Where having a talk about who gets what loot, right? It is important. Um, but at the same time, I think Guild Wars 2 offers a lot of depth when it comes to social interaction that necessarily arguing over loot isn't the most important thing for kind of developing like interpersonal relationships or anything. And so, I mentioned that I do think quest lines are pretty good, right? Like in other established MMOs where you have quest lines, I think those are a positive thing because you kind of have an ongoing story. Um, but you kind of get that same experience through your main story in Guild Wars 2. So it's basically just called the story, right? There's the story, and then there's questing and all the other stuff you can do, right? And in the main story, you kind of go through that experience. And even in that story, you're going to be making choices. You're going to be making decisions that are unique to you, and they'll affect your experience of how you progress through the story. And other games have that. And I think when games have that, it's really strong. I think Guild Wars 2 doesn't have that as much as some other games, but it definitely has it more than some um, as well. So when you're going through the story, and I think that's a big part of the experience, right? So when you ask like, well, what should I do? I would say just going through the whole story, right? At your own pace, right? And then taking breaks from the story to do other things. But I think the story's actually legitimately, it's a decent story, right? I think in some areas it's really strong. Some areas it's a little bit weaker, obviously. But I think you're gonna find that in just any story, right? Whether it's in an MMO, whether it's a show, whether it's a book, right? There's gonna be strengths and weaknesses to it. And I think especially when you're talking about a game that's a decade old, right? Over a decade, and you have different people working on it, different devs and stuff. There's going to be some variety to how it is told, but also actually, I think decades is correct for the story because a lot of the story in Guild Wars 2, especially in the later expansions, calls back to Guild Wars 1. And especially when you start getting into Path of Fire and into the desert, a lot of the original gods factor into the story. And yeah, I find it honestly some of the best story that I've ever experienced. And I'm sure part of that is nostalgia for Guild Wars 1, and even nostalgia for this game. I mean, it's that point that I can have nostalgia for it. But yeah, so definitely the story is good. Definitely something you should be doing. In addition to the story, world bosses, world events, events like the orange events that you'll see on the screen where people just show up and they do them together, and then you all get rewards. The other thing about those world bosses, world events, is that they'll progress a map state, and it's not going to be like the map's going to change super drastically, but depending on where you are in the localized area, what world events and world quests have been completed will slightly change how the map experience is, what you have access to, if certain places are open. Sometimes, like, legitimately, like, the terrain will change, the bosses that are there that will change. And then as you get into some of the later expansions, those will kind of appear as meta events. And the way the meta events work is um, well, here, let me actually log in, and then we'll see if I can jump into an event. Um, but the way those events will work is they'll culminate in sort of like a big boss or a big story moment, and then in that when that happens, there'll be bigger rewards and stuff, right? And so that's for the people that aren't interested in kind of like the more organized PvE experience, like your typical raiding, dungeons, etc. There's a lot of people who just enjoy kind of like casual open world gameplay, and that consists of events, world metas. There's jumping puzzles. There's a lot of mini games, adventures, and so on in the game. Um, and adventures can be stuff like racing. It can be stuff like shooting games. If anyone's really familiar with the Golden Cactus, it's been a while since I played 14, but like that kind of area in 14, they should be on Octovine here. Let's see. But like that kind of, whoa, this character is not complete POI, but that kind of experience. You kind of have arcade games, and jumping puzzles give rewards, and they're pretty fun. There's little collections you can do in the open world. A lot of open world stuff you could do. So, it's I mean, the game is really diverse and the experience is really diverse, so it's really hard sometimes to just kind of like say like do this, do this, do this, do this. I think exploration in this game is one of my, you know, biggest positives, right? Is that it feels like you can kind of just like go through the game and explore and find things on your own. Okay, so definitely the events going on. Let me just see. Let's go ahead. Let's do this one. Okay, so this is a meta event, and um, so how it works is on this map, those orange things are happening around the map, and these events are kind of on a timer, but they can fail to fire sometimes depending on if people aren't doing the events. I think usually, I mean, this is kind of like an off period of the day. It's kind of like noon on a Saturday, which actually, you know what? I mean, that's a pretty good time. But most people kind of start their day at reset, and I think resets. I want to say it's 7 p.m. But most people kind of start their day at reset and kind of do all the things they need to do. You know, the Wizard's Vault with your dailies, right? Like daily PvP, daily WW, daily PvE stuff. There's a lot of like daily timers for farming certain things that people will do, and they kind of just get on like, you know, raiding fractals, etc. They get on at reset. You know, they'll power through all of it and then they'll get off. But obviously, that's for more, you know, established players in the game, right? Okay, so in this event, oh, okay, cool. So everyone's actually completed the event. You'll see not everyone's in the squad. Um, hmm, my my model count, and also this is another thing. Is settings is pretty important. Ah, okay, he loaded in. You can set your settings. Like right now, my settings are pretty high, but you can set your settings to kind of change, like the quality of other characters, and also like the limit. So if I put this on lower, like if you had seen earlier, this person, they're in almost full legendary, but they they looked like a generic, like kind of like bland character model. And that is one of the settings you can change. Like if there's too many effects or too many people on screen, you can kind of lower the settings so that people start to become generic, and then just to save, save on your own processes. I'll just kind of hang out here. It looks like this event's pretty efficient. We still have 5 minutes until the final kind of boss event spawns, and even before that, I think we're a bit um, ahead of the timer. So it seems like the commanders on this map for this meta event are actually pretty fast. I don't want to talk too much about like what this event is because it's kind of like spoilers for the story. But also, if you're familiar with kind of Guild Wars 1, maybe there's some stuff in here that will seem familiar. But basically, the way it works is, there'll be like those orange events on the map that I was talking about, and they kind of progress to this point where essentially what's happening is we need to defend the city. So we're in the city, we got kicked out of the city, now we're gonna need to defend it. You can see in the map chat, people are kind of like coordinating, the commanders are coordinating. So this is one of the biggest things for like just open world casual players that they love to do is, and honestly, I like to do it too. Um, it's just that organized PVE content and like high-end PvP content is obviously going to give better rewards because there's a certain amount of personal responsibility that in those modes that you're rewarded more for, right? Like my DPS doesn't necessarily matter in this open world meta, right? If I'm running around dying a lot, as long as I'm participating, I'm gonna get some rewards. And so like the rewards have to be proportioned based on that, right? You can see here, this is actually the squad interface, and you can see like the classes everyone's playing. This guy's playing Base Guardian, Spectre, Virtuoso, which is Mesmer. This is Thief, and then we have 3 Berserkers, which are Warriors. So yeah, so about 3 more minutes on that. Kind of talking about, I guess, individual responsibility, right? In terms of like DPS, right? So that's one of the kind of things that I'll talk about in this game right now is that, because once we're going to get in here, you're going to see some combat. The combat system in this game is so unique, right? So for one, right, you have kind of like this set skill bar, right? And I know there's definitely some people who love having like a million skills on their bar, right? But a lot of the times, like on games where you have like a million skills, right? You're not actually pressing all of them. A lot of them are upkeep, right? And there's definitely like something to be said about the skill floor, skill ceiling of having to constantly upkeep certain boons or buffs. But your standard rotation, I would say in most games, comes down to 3 or 4 skills in general anyways, right? And I would say and that's the one thing I like about this game is, right, like there's less things on your screen, but because of that, you actually use most of them more often. So I would say in a standard rotation, I'm actually going to use all of my skills. Every skill I have on my bar. This is the wrong one. This should be... I think it should be this guy. But I'm actually going to use every skill on my bar throughout a full rotation, right? So it's 15 skills that I'm actually going to be using, right? So I mean, I like that, right? The other thing is like the personalization of your skills on your bar, right? It's based on your weapons, based on if your weapon's in your main hand or your offhand, right? So based on certain scenarios, right? Right now, this build is kind of set up for just rating maximum DPS, right? But like technically, in theory, like if I had a build, and generally when I'm doing like open world PV. Like meta events like this, I don't try to min-max that because already like I just know like in general I'm doing a lot of damage, so it doesn't matter. I mean, I think in theory like for open world stuff you'd want a little bit more boon to allies, right? So like the way I'm set up is for raiding, so I'm relying on getting my boons from like a support class in a raid, whereas like in theory like I should be set up when I'm in this scenario for more balanced boon duration. Boons are buffs. Sorry. If you're not familiar with if the lingo of Guild Wars 2, boons are buffs. Um, but in addition to that, if I wanted to be a little bit more tanky, I'm a little bit glass cannony. I don't think it's gonna matter. We'll see. But I could build out a little bit more tanky, maybe a little bit more damage over time, etc., etc. I have a lot of single target matter stuff. If I wanted to be more built for AOE. So the combat system is very, very customizable. I think in addition to being customizable, there's also the fact that it's an action combat system. Okay, so we're gonna be hitting this thing. Um, it's an action combat system. So what that means is like, you know, you can tab target actually. So I think there's something that's good to learn is that you can tab target in this game. Like if you tab, you'll go to other targets. I can also target things by clicking on someone and then clicking T or Control T, and it'll put a target on them. And then when you're in raids, I mean, this only really matters for raids, but if someone puts a target on something, then the first time you tab will be to that person. But realistically, like, you can just be clicking. Oh, okay, so now I'm a little mushroom. And basically, wait, I'm trying to remember what I have to do. I think I basically just have to live. Oh, I got kicked out of the mushroom. So basically, okay, so I have to become a mushroom. Yeah, okay, I remember. I have to become a mushroom, and then I have to bring my spores to the other side and infect this thing, and then, you know, so, honestly, I'm just gonna stay in the center and, like, kind of try and, like, fight these mobs. You're not supposed to be killing these mobs. You'll see, well, I mean, you can, but, I mean, they're pretty tough. Okay. This guy got me over here. These are pretty tough mobs. Really, like, everyone should be doing the thing where they're the little mushroom guys. This guy's hopefully gonna res me. And then I need to... he got interrupted. Honestly, I should just die and go back to the start. Oh, he got launched. Oh, he's down too. Okay, so I'm just gonna go... I just want to... Because I'm gonna die, so I just want to help this guy up because he res me. I just vengeance. Maybe I can actually kill this guy? Oh. I could have actually killed that guy and then got my vengeance proc, but that's whatever. Anyways, I'm trying to do multiple things at once. Like I said, like, in that scenario, a more balanced build that makes me a little more tanky would be better because, again, you know, party buffs are not necessarily... guaranteed in metas like this. So, if I was able to be a little bit more self-reliant or independent, that'd be better for this scenario. But yeah, so like skills tied to weapon combos makes it a little more customizable for different situations. Like again, like this situation that I'm talking about right now, where I could make my build a little bit more balanced and survive these encounters a little bit better, and then I can be full glass cannon DPS, right? And then again, like it's action, like it is tab targeting, but it is also action targeting. Okay, so I spread my spores. There's actually only 2 left. Ooh, okay. Ooh, okay. Okay. There's actually only 2 spores left, so I'm just gonna hope that someone... Okay, so now this thing is vulnerable, and again, tab target to it. I'm just gonna go kind of a cool kind of DPS rotation here. We're also all grouped now, so there's probably gonna dodge that. I'm gonna headbutt here. I used my M4 too early. Oh, but I have stability from another source, so that's great. Oh, shit. Okay, that's really awkward. Okay, so, yeah, if you're... Okay. If you're paying attention to chat, people are, like, panicking, because all of these have to die at the same time. For some reason, I guess the South people, the team that was on South just didn't fire, or they're having issues. We probably killed it too fast. We're on the west side, so Yeah, we probably killed it too fast. So essentially, everything's gonna. We have 20 seconds. I don't know. People are burning this fucker. Maybe I should have actually gone over there to help. Is anyone over there? My commander's actually there. Oh, it probably got another shield. It probably got its shield back. Okay, so now everything's after this timer runs out, everything's gonna regenerate, and we're just gonna have to do the event again.
We have the power to repel Mordramon, and we shall reject its Mordram from Tarir.
That guy ran me over. Anyways, yeah, so combat can be hybridized. There's a lot of customization with builds and everything. I think that's good enough. Well, do I want these rewards? Probably. But yeah, so like your build, right? Like these things matter, right? So I would say taking some time to read over these is kind of good, because even though you can look up a guide for like the maximum optimal DPS for one of these things, at the same time, so it's good to know just what your build does, because you can make decisions on the fly that like the best guide says to do this, but like in reality, like, you know, you're in a specific niche situation where something else is better. Like, let's just take for example this, right? Crit hits give bonus adrenaline. So my adrenaline bar, what's this? Crit give bonus ferocity. Attack speed is increased. Okay, so that, I mean, adrenaline is pretty important for my class, so that one is just kind of like the best one in the period. I think you would overtake something else. Burst skills, gain ferocity. Okay, so like, let me try and find one that's like.
Shroom magic makes big vine slime weaker.
So this one's pretty, like this one for example. So if I was struggling to keep my burst up for whatever reason, that one would be a good one to have to just keep, because instead of burning, right? Or also there's some bosses that don't care about damage over time. They prefer burst, so stuff like that. Uh-oh, I think. All right, I'm just gonna kill this. But yeah, so yeah, again, I'm kind of rambling at this point, but yeah, that's all I really want to say about the combat system, is that it's pretty diverse in terms of how it works, and, you know, action combat is a little different from tab targeting, although there's tab targeting elements to this game that allow you to, if you're more used to that system, kind of do the same thing. But again, when I say action combat, it's just more so to say that, right, you're going to be dodging stuff, you're going to be, depending on the direction that you're pointing, your attacks are going to go in one direction or the other. But the event should be complete. Maybe it's this one? If we failed here, that's kind of sad. I think north. I think we're good. I think it's north that failed. Yeah, it was north that failed. Okay. Very awkward. I mean, but again, this is why this is why some people kind of like these meta events, right? Like, it is challenging, right? It can be challenging for different reasons. I think this is kind of one of those situations where like one group failed, and because that one group failed, everything kind of erupts into chaos, right? There's kind of like an expected standard for how the game works, right? And then when you see like one group fail, everyone else kind of just like loses their mind. So, oh, this is already okay. So this is okay. So everyone's saying stop UPS. People are kind of trolling. Unfortunately, people are kind of trolling, I think, or just inexperienced players, right? Like, so people need to like not do that damage. Anyways, not super super confident in this meta anymore. But yeah, so I'm glad you guys got to see that kind of like failed meta. But yeah, so kind of just like other things to talk about. Underwater combat's pretty good. The small personalizations to the story are pretty good. Voice acting is really good. Cinematic storytelling, I think there's, the way that they present the story is pretty good. Actually, North is pretty close. We still have a minute. Maybe I can get over there and do something.
Mordramon cannot win.
Out of combat. We have a minute. I don't think it's impossible. Crafting and collectibles, right? Like, there's a lot of stuff to craft. The crafting's actually good. Crafting actually matters. I think crafting is rewarding. And I think for different. The reason I say that's like, okay. So they pulled it out. They pulled out the win. They pulled out the win, guys. They got it together. They stopped trolling. So you'll see getting all these chests, and then so the other thing is at the end of this event. So at the end of this event, where is it? A hole opens up here. Oh, here. Sorry, been a while since I did this event. And basically, when this hole opens up, there's gonna be a lot of oh, he got me. Oh, he's in downstate though. Oh, okay, we got him. Okay. So there's gonna be a lot of. I don't want to resurrect. Okay. Did I open this? Yeah, so you can see there's a lot of people here just because the event just finished. But this is an event where at the end, basically a vault opens up, and like the people are like, "Hey, thank you for your help. Go ahead and raid our vaults." So that's what people are doing. They're just running around raiding the vaults. But yeah, crafting actually matters. I think one thing you can do is you can deposit all the materials, compact. When you open stuff, you get lots of crafting materials. Again, you can deposit those directly in your bank. You can salvage materials, so like salvage materials. Sometimes salvaging is good, sometimes it's not good. Sometimes like probably salvaging those bags is good. But you get a lot of components for different stuff. And I would say like if you can, like if you see something that you can gather, go ahead and just gather it. Because there's a high chance that you're gonna need it at some point. Crafting, when you every additional item you craft after the first is like half the amount of time, so exponentially it speeds up. You're not sitting there forever, hopefully, to craft stuff. Crafting is like a big part of like the not only just like getting better equipment, but also getting better cosmetics. I think cosmetics are like is in it's kind of like a joke, but also like serious, like right, like it's part of the end game, and I think that's true for like a lot of games, right? Like kind of finding that look for your character. It's all about like that personalization. So like finding the cosmetics that you like and everything is a part of that, and I think that's another reason I like is the dye system, so that you can have like different armors that weren't meant to go together, and you can really like customize your look by like pairing things together and then dyeing them so that they kind of match. What else? Action combat, right? Like I had no target, I can still leap forward like that. Where I click is where I'm gonna go. Yeah, dyes matter. The other thing I want to talk about was guilds. So guilds actually do matter. Guilds actually make a difference There's a lot of stuff you can do with your guild that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. Unlocking, like, I mean, obviously there's certain cosmetics that you unlock, but there's rewards you can get. It's a way to make money. Guild missions to buy commendations, to buy certain, to help you get best in slot faster. So I would say like doing guild missions and getting the guild mission currency is going to help you get the best in slot gear faster than just like the alternative ways. It's not the only way. But yeah, helping to build up the guild hall, it can be really cool to, add all the upgrades and get like a max guild hall, and then, do fun stuff like, friendly PvP and other things like that. I think I have music turned off right now, but the music is like pretty amazing in this game. I think it's, obviously all games like have really good music, right? So I don't think that's like a point or anything special, but like I think if you really like listen to some of the music, it's pretty good. But yeah, music's pretty good. What else? Yeah, PvP is pretty challenging. I mean, like as you can see, like just like the diversity of your build, right? Like think about the fact that like other people are gonna have as diverse builds, and because it's not tab targeting like 100%, right? Because the way combat works is that it's action combat, and like where you land stuff matters. Like there's a lot of skill expression with PvP because you could just straight up miss your skills, right? You can dodge skills, right? You can not only dodge skills, but iframe skills, right, as well. So PvP can be pretty rewarding and feel really good when you are able to actually dodge certain stuff or get around certain stuff. Dub similarly, it's a whole different thing, right? But Dub kind of has its own, so usually the way Dub works is that there's like a commander in a group, right? And the commander's like basically, they can be guild leaders, and a lot of the times the best Dub like groups are guilds, right? There are guilds in the game that are 100% dedicated to Dub, to world versus world, and so those guilds usually, there's a lot of strategy involved, right? You can have roamers who are supposed to take people out on the map. Let's see. I'm looking for a commander. Let's go ahead and go here. Looks like there's a lot of fighting going on here. But there's going to be a lot of strategy between those guilds. And because basically the way Dub works is that your world or your team gets points based on how much of the map you control. And so basically the way it works is you're going around trying to siege other people's bases. So it is a PvP driven. It is like player versus player. Okay, so like if I join this person's squad, right? Which is, I don't know. Okay, so there's a special Dub mount that you can get. It's called the Warclaw. It looks like this. It's just like a little armored cat. And is this the skin I have for this? No, it's not. I have different skins. It's just loading in. My computer is kind of slow. Mainly because it's on my hard drive, not my SSD. Okay, so the way Dub works, right? You have all of these like structures, right? And you get points for how much you're controlling them, right? And in the end, you want to control this area in the center. And so basically, there's a limited amount of people, right, on the map, right? So like in this squad, we have 30. There's probably a couple roamers in the area who are just like kind of just like hanging out. Okay. So this is the other thing. This is how you earn rewards, right? You have your participation, and then based on your participation, you earn rewards. The reward track. Oh no, this one, right? and then based on that, you basically go up, right? And so the way it works is you have two types of rewards in WW, right? You have basically your money rewards. I don't know. It's kind of hard to think of. You have your reward tracks, which basically build towards certain things, and then you have your like participation rewards, which is basically your rank. The higher your rank is, the better it gets, right? And so part of that is that the tracks fill up faster than the ranks. But the way it works is that based on your participation, you get more. You basically get this many crowns every 5 minutes, right? And so the only thing about that is that you kind of have to stay. You kind of have to keep your participation up. I'm not actually sure killing one of those guards would get me participation. I'm not sure. So I'm just gonna go group with my team because I know I'll get participation there. The other way you can get participation is if I kill this yak. Actually, maybe I'll kill that yak. You can kill scouts and stuff. So like if you're solo roaming and you're not with a group, you can do stuff like kill scouts, flip camps. Like these camps should be fairly easy to flip. They get protection every time they're flipped. So basically like you can't just like chain flip them back and forth and like abuse things that way. Or I'm 90% sure this thief just one-shots me, so I'm not going to mess with him. That was an enemy. He's also not sure that I don't one-shot him. I'm guessing that he's going to one-shot me just because... what the fuck? Oh my god. So that yak's invulnerable for 3 minutes. I should... Oh. Okay, this guy... Yeah, nice. Alright, I got ganked. It is what it is. I will say that is not good for my participation. It is not good at all. Yeah, so basically you want to keep your participation up, right? If you care about rewards, right? Because that's the main thing for rewards, right? In this game is getting your participation, keeping it up. But like, you know, outside of the rewards, just like whether you're winning or losing the game is basically the commander doing stuff on the map, right? So I'm gonna lose participation in 2 minutes. I think probably there's stuff going on over here. So you can see them kind of talking about what they think we should do. They're kind of arguing about it. There's always going to be yappers. Like, I think this guy's just kind of yapping. This one guy, like, complaining. But usually you just follow what the commander says, and they're gonna... So you can see how I can click on this wall, right? And it has... Oh, sick. I failed something, which gave me participation. Okay, so this is the other thing. Your participation stays when you leave WW. So I'm actually just going to leave WW right now because I don't know next time I want to do it, but it's nice to have my participation at 100% next time I come back in. But yeah, so basically what I was saying about WW is you have those maps and you're basically trying to control them the most. But because there's like a limited amount of people, right? They're huge maps, right? You can see our squad was about 30. Sometimes at peak times, there's going to be about like 3 squads all at max, which is like 50. So like 150 people on the map, maybe some roamers, maybe some scouts and stuff. But essentially like can't be everywhere at once, right? So half of the time is your commander trying to predict what the other team's commander is going to do. The other half of the time is just like rotating through and trying to like cap as much as possible. And then ultimately it reaches a critical mass where the central base needs to be taken out, and then usually there'll be a big fight there. And you see I got ganked there. There's sometimes small skirmishes. You can see them arguing in chat. I think they had just lost a small skirmish outside of Stronghold or something like that. But yeah, WW can be pretty like straightforward, but also pretty complex, so I won't get too much into it. It is fun, I think, especially like getting with a group and just kind of like following them around and like capping stuff, getting into small fights, because it can feel a little less like punishing or a little less intense as PvP. And there are a lot of people who only WW, right? Like there are a lot of people who only WW, only PvP, right? Like if League of Legends had like a PvE version, right? Or it's like people who only like ARAM, right? It's like a legitimate game mode that has its own like merits to it, right? And then obviously the last part is dungeons, strikes, fractals, and raids, right? That's the kind of like the last end game stuff. Like, well, kind of going through the end game stuff, right? You can just kind of go around doing like open world event maps and kind of getting like gold experience that way, right? Because there's a lot of stuff to like buy in the game, right? So like, or like work towards, right? And like, so one of them is like wardrobe, right? Unlocking like all the looks, right? So also like if you go to a bank, you click on this tab, you can kind of see this is all basically all the skins in the games. I think there are sometimes there are like hidden skins, but so basically what you can do from this is you can try everything out. So you can preview again on my hard drive, not my SSD, so it takes a little bit for like assets to load in. But you can preview what certain things look like. Oh, this is for only Azura. Okay, so I can't look at that. Let's see. VChat. What's something I don't have? Oh wow. Oh, that's kind of a cool little hood thing. I should try figure out how to get that and get that. The fishing hat, probably get through fishing. A big wizard's hat. It's kind of fun. Oh wow, that's kind of. Well, I'm digging these hoods. Oh, that's kind of a fun hat too. Yeah, it's been a while. I haven't played in a while, so you know I'm missing some stuff. That's just like a headband, or I'm further behind on my collection than I'd like to be. It's like a funny little thing. So yeah, so basically you can preview stuff, right? So like I can preview this, right? Then I can preview some shoulders. With some shoulders I don't have.
Find everything you need here.
Yeah, that looks good. What about here? I think this is all from the same set, actually. Yeah. This is Astral Ward? Oh no, this is Battle Helm. What is this one? Oh, that looks pretty sick, honestly. And then, so you can also preview dies. So if I open up my character tab, or actually, even if I do it this way, right? Even if I go to the Blackline Trading Company and I search a die, let's just go other and dies, and then I just pick a die, right? I can preview this die, and then I can preview another die, and I can preview another die, and I can preview another die, right? And it will basically show the dies. I'm not sure. Well, so different equipment has different channels. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, but so you can kind of view it like that. I kind of like that set. Maybe you have to work on that. But yeah, so that's one thing. You know, unlocking all the cosmetics is like a big part of the game, right? So that you can kind of like, you know, make your character look how you want, right? So this is the wardrobe. If I start clicking random, you can kind of see, you know, the. Okay, so my. Okay, wait. Let me move to a different set. Trying to find a set I don't care about. Actually, what if I'm gonna copy this one. Oh wait. Yeah. I'm gonna copy this one. I'm gonna paste it here. Yep. And then, cause my dies are like weird. Yeah, this is messing up my dies. So I'm just gonna take all my dies off. Okay. And then I'm going to go to wardrobe and just start randomizing my ones. But yeah, so yeah, the fashion part of things is like a big. Oh, that one kind of look cool. Kind of looks. The fashion part of things is definitely like, you know, unlocking appearances and making your character look the way you want is definitely a part of the game that people will call endgame. The other part is obviously like the WW that we talked about, or the open world stuff. PvP is another part. Obviously, like there's like collection. Like I know there's like, you know, some people like just like achievement hunting. I have very low achievement. Honestly, so like there's permanent achievement points and then there's daily achievement points, and I never did my dailies, so you know, if you look at like the spread of like a more established account, they might have like 5K daily. I think there's actually there's a cap on daily points, but they might actually be at 5K. So my achievement points are pretty low, but I think my permanent points are pretty high actually. But also like my achievement points in general are kind of low. Okay, so then PvE is kind of like the last thing I want to talk about, right? So this is called fractals. Fractals are kind of interesting. They're kind of like Mythic Plus, and they're all kind of like small 5-man dungeons. But you'll see this thing. It says personal agony resistance, right? So when you start fractals, you're gonna be level 1, right? And basically, as you complete fractals, you unlock the next tier. I'm trying to remember if I bring someone in to like a level. I'm trying to remember if they have to. I think there's a point that you can skip, basically, but basically you do all the fractals and eventually you get your fractal level up. Based on what your fractal level is, you can choose the fractal. That's kind of like, it is what it is. I mean, like, because you're just gonna have to get used to it, right? But like your personal agony resist. So basically, like there's like afflictions in the fractals that'll hurt you, and then if you have a higher agony resistance, you'll be able to withstand them. Like if someone just came into like level 100, they would just insta die, and you can kind of see the instabilities here. It's kind of like M plus, right? And Mythic Plus in WoW actually took this system from Guild Wars, but you can see here the ones. Low health increasingly slows your movement up to 33%. Outgoing resistance and resolution duration is increased by 33%, but enemies apply random damage conditions. And then when enemies die, they enhance nearby foes with multiple boons, stripping any enemy boon to inflict them with weakness and damage nearby foes. Another one is like, the stay in your own space, where you'll bump your allies and stuff. If you stand next to them, you'll do damage, stuff like that. That's kind of fractals. This is kind of like the end game 5-man content, similar to Mythic Plus. There's also raids. The raid lobby is over here. We'll go into the raid lobby. The raid lobby, and then strikes and dungeons. I'm sure you've seen dungeons by now. There's story mode, there's non-story mode. Basically, like, you can farm dungeons, but kind of once you get through it, once you get through all the dungeons, then you don't really go back unless you want the achievements, or there's actually dungeon-specific armor, actually, that you can farm. So if you want the dungeon-specific armor, you try to do the dungeons. I'm trying to remember if they're on a weekly reset, or if you can just do them as much as you want. I want to say they're on a daily reset. So every day you can farm all the dungeons, get currency, and then you can use that currency to buy the dungeon stuff. Raids are on a weekly reset. Fractals are on a daily reset. I don't remember if strikes are on one. Nice. But yeah, so this is kind of the raid lobby, because the raids have like a physical location on the map, but like otherwise you go in these little portals here, and then when you go in the portals, then you'll be in the raid. Pretty straightforward. But then also, like, people will hang out here. Is this Forsaken Thicket? And then this should be Spirit Vale. Okay, so I'll jump into one of the raids real quick. This is the first raid, and this is, the one that I would want to... Why? Oh, I see. Raid mode. So this is the raid. The first raid. This is the one that I kind of like to start on. I think there's easier ones, but like I think there's a lot of like good mechanics in this one that help help teaching what raiding really is about, right? So there's a story and everything to this.
Let's get to work.
It's voice acted and everything, but basically, the vigils here, they're doing
We never
stuff.
saw them coming. They killed some of our soldiers and took the rest hostage.
Thing you have to do. So
We need to find
there's
them.
3 pre-bosses here that
Stay
kind of
alert out
teach
there.
the encounter.
Bantha is ruthless, and her defenses are like nothing I've seen before.
Unfortunately, I cannot solo them.
Ceasefire! Ceasefire!
I'm 90% sure I can't solo them. I'm almost 1,000% sure this guy's gonna fuck me up. Okay. It looks like I might be able to solo this guy. So you can see there's these little orbs on the ground. And then what this guy does is he teleports you. So you can see these little blue things on the ground. If I stand in them, he would teleport me. Like this, he's gonna teleport me. Oh, I blocked it. Okay. You know, I thought about it. I thought about letting him teleport me, but then if he teleports me to one of his buddies, then I'll definitely just die. But yeah, so a couple mechanics to this fight are the orbs, right? They're just doing passive damage, and in a group where you have healing, I'm kind of dodging them a little bit, but like in a group where you have healing, they don't really matter because, and then you can also just like step out of those things. You don't actually have to dodge them. If you have movement abilities, you can just dodge them as well. But you know, obviously, this is gonna teleport me to a random spot on the map. I mean, it maybe could not the end of the world, but you never know, right? So, you know, you usually just don't want to just not have any agency over where you're moving. But yeah. Yeah, so this is an example of this is the pre-boss, it's not the actual real boss, so he's not doing much damage. I'm also like dodging a lot of his damage, and mostly this guy's just here to like kind of give you a preview of the fight, and that's kind of why I like this fight as like a starting point, because it has this like little preview. A lot of some other fights will also have it, but not all of them have like a preview, obviously, of like, you know, what the fight is like. I dodged that out of a. I probably could. When I get him like lower, I can probably just let him teleport me to show you guys what that's like. But yeah, so you can see back there, there's like a big pylon, and that is where the actual raid boss is, and he's on a dais, and it moves in a circle, and oh yeah, obviously. Okay, so on the dais, there's going to be it's divided into thirds, right? So it's a circular arena divided into thirds, and if you in one third in like the first phase, 1/3 of the arena is basically like the floor is lava, and so you don't want to be in it, right? And then in the second phase, 2/3 of the arena are lava, and so that's basically that's the other big reason getting teleported. You don't want to get teleported because the floor is lava. But yeah. But yeah, and then also you can see my AOE does like a my scorched earth goes out in like a linear pattern. So like that's another thing, right? Is like lining them up so that I'm getting more damage out of it. Like actually, like if you really wanted to min-max, you can see like the actual AOE is like this, right? So this is actual min-maxing, where he's on 2 of them at the same time. And so making sure that you step the correct distance away so that happens, because if I'm like melee of him and I cast it, see now he's only in 1, right? And he'll take double ticks if he's in 2. And yeah, so that guy does that. Oh, okay. After you get him to 0, you have to break him. And this is a break bar. So break bars are really important, actually. Break bars are a big part of the game. So having classes that have good break bar is important too. So I have like small damage over time stuff. But my big break is on my headbutt and my 5 skill. Luckily he has a small break bar because he's just like a small boss. Yeah, and basically, yeah. So that guy teleports you. This guy, he'll make like basically orbs. Here, I'll just show you. I'm not gonna spend all that time killing this guy too, but these orbs damage you, so you don't want to stand in them. Yeah, they'll just kill me. And then this guy, actually, so he makes this. Okay, so this is cool. This is gonna kill me. Yeah. So that little green square, this thing, it's gonna do a lightning strike. The more people in the lightning strike, the less damage it does. So like during the fight that appears randomly, and you just need like 4 people to stand in it to like mitigate the damage. And basically all those things are happening at once. Each of the bosses has this ring around it. I don't know if you saw that red ring that does damage to you. But yeah, so like I think the boss design in the game, especially for the raids, is pretty good. And it's like a good balance of like personal responsibility, and because everyone has to like do stuff a lot of the times, versus like in some raids in other games, like you can kind of like just chill and not do a whole lot. People are enjoying the new outfit. But yeah, that's basically it. The only other thing, I'll just go do a quick rundown. Settings, you know, I'm sure there's guides that say the like optimal settings. I think the most important one is post-processing, right? Having that like, I mean that's a big difference, right? Having that post-processing on or not. But yeah, there's guides on probably optimal settings. The LFG, right? So these are all like this is your friends and stuff. Oh my god. This is one of my old raiding buddies. But yeah, so LFG. So this is where you would go. Like, so for example, right? Judah is in Orc Basin, right? So Orc Basin is Heart of Thorns, right? And then if I click here, it says Bauble Farm, right? So the next meta for Heart of Thorns is going to be Dragon Stand. Okay, so if I click on Dragon Stand, here's the South Lane meta. This is where I joined. So like earlier when I did the Orc Basin, it would say here, the meta here. Same with here's an HP train, so if you need hero points, there's a commander who goes around. And some of the hero points are easier to do in a group. So I think this is important for meta events and for hero points, right? When you're in the early stages of getting hero points so that you can unlock your elite spec, because these are your elite specs down here, right? And so you need 10 for each of these, so I think it's 250 for each of them. So getting 250 hero points is it's pretty easy. So like if you click here, right, if I hover, so there's 11 hero points here, so that's 110. There's 11 hero points here, so that's 220. There's 11 here. Okay, so 330. And then in Dragon Stand, there's 7. So 380. So in Heart of Thorns, the first expansion, there's 380 hero points you can get, right? And there's easier ones and harder ones, right? So when you're on an HP train, they'll usually try and hit the easier ones. This one's kind of hard because it's locked. Like there's a gate here that's locked depending on a meta event, so people usually skip that. Actually, I think in hero trains people usually do it. Here there's a big like Hydra thing you have to fight. Sorry, it's called a chalk. They're kind of like Tyranids-ish bugs. But so there's 380 there. If we go to the Path of Fire, the second expansion, there's 8, 5, 7. Oh, there's a decent amount less. Haven't gotten all the ones in the Desolation. So that's 6, 60, then it's 140, then it's 190, then it's 260. Okay. So actually, if you only had the if you only had the Path of Fire expansion, oh right, there's DLC. not DLC, but there's additional stories. So there's 3 extra here. Oh, so there's 3 extra here. Okay, so there's 290, so almost 300 hero points here. So you'd have to get most of them compared to Heart of Thorns. But if you also had the Heart of Thorns expansion and you had some of those, what is that? What did I say? Like I think I said like 3. I want to say I said 380 plus 290, which would be enough to get all 3 elite specs, right? So this is Heart of Thorns, Spellbreaker is Path of Fire, Bladesworn is the 3rd expansion in Cantha, which is down here. I haven't done too much, but it looks like there's a decent amount of hero points here too. Okay, so yeah, so that's how hero points work. That's what is important about the LFG. Obviously, like you can do raids, you can do strikes. There's W-Dub. I don't think people use this because you can just go on the map, look for the commander, join their squad. PvP, I think maybe if people want to do tournaments, maybe, but usually people just talk in chat. Fractals, this is a big one, like daily fractals. Like I could go here. This person wants to do tier 4 fractals and the recommended. He wants quickness, a healer, and a DPS. So I could probably join as DPS, do that. It's been a while since I did fractals. Some people do farm this. So here, like 4 people are farming explorable Jotun Path. You could join that group for dungeons. Some people do farm dungeons. And yeah, and so that's it. That's that. Hero tab. So just going through quick equipment. I think it's pretty straightforward. Just making sure that you have your right stats for stuff. So like I said, like early on, like if you're just open world, Celestial's pretty good. Because it's even everything. It's hard to mess up. I'm right now on Vipers, which is kind of like best in slot for damage over time. If I was gonna do Berserker is kind of best in slot for burst damage, which is like it's kind of like, yeah, it's burst damage, I would say. That's basically the 2 types of damage. There's damage over time, there's burst damage. You can also have healing, so like cleric healing. Harriers is actually like the best healing because it also has concentration, which helps with your boon duration, which is keeping your buffs up. And then also it has a lot of power, so just to do damage. So it has healing power for heals, right? And then it has concentration, and then it has power. So if you wanted to do like something a little bit more defensive, you would do something like Magi's, which is healing power. Oh no, Magi's isn't that good. There's probably one in here. I'm not super familiar with all the stat types, but like making sure your equipment has stats, making sure your equipment has runes. Infusions are kind of like the end tier, top tier thing. You don't really have to worry about. You can see your stats here. Yeah, I think equipment tab is pretty straightforward. Wardrobe tab. So if you click on this and then you click on a skin that, like, if you unlock the skin, you can apply it for free like this. And then once a skin is unlocked in your wardrobe, you can click on the skin and then you can apply it. My cost is 0 because I have legendary armor. So, you know, that's just one of the tiny perks about legendary armor is that you can freely apply any look that you want for free. So I have a lot of transmutation charges saved up because you get them from events, rewards, block line chests, map completion, etc. And then once you have full legendary, you just never use them. That's the other thing about in my equipment tab. You see all of these, like this little chain. This is like my legendary armory. So any of my characters. So like if I just go to like a blank tab and I have nothing on. I have nothing in my inventory, but I can still access my legendary armor, equipped it, and all my characters have access to it. I can put anything I want on it, and yeah, so that's end game. Legendaries are big goal. There's also outfits, which are kind of cool. You know, not a lot of customization, but like if you don't have like a big wardrobe unlocked, this outfit's kind of sick. If you don't have a big wardrobe unlocked, right? But you still just want to like look cool while like, you know, you're leveling, because like while you're leveling, your gear might actually look something more like, you know, if I just go here, right, wardrobe, and I click on my gear, you know, like let's just click some of the early gear, right? Like you could have some like really, you know, random combinations. And again, this is what I like about dyes, right? So I just put on a bunch of random gear, right? This is early kind of level gear, like Porteria gear, and this isn't terrible, right? Um, especially like I could dye this, I could dye it all black, dye it all silver, put some like nice, let's put some nice like taupes in here or something. Oh, that's kind of nice, right? Add a little bit of color here, here, here. Where's the front part? Is that it? Yeah, and then maybe some, I don't know, these are pretty bright colors. Maybe just some like charcoal. Right? Like, honestly, that doesn't look half bad. Considering I just like randomly selected a bunch of like early like starting like core tier armor, right? But let's say like you don't you're not happy with what you have, right? Then that's where outfits kind of come in. You can like get an outfit and then basically never have to worry about how you look. Or if you're on another character and you just don't want. Oh, also if you don't have transmutation charges or something, you just pick an outfit and then so that's the good thing about outfits is they override everything, right? They just like they're like they like go on top of all your stuff. That's the outfit tab. There's obviously dyes, gliders. Once you get into Heart of Thorns, you'll get your glider, I think. And then there's there's some. I think there's a Goku cloud. Mine's dyed red, so it kind of looks weird. But then yeah, the sheet music one's kind of fun. Yeah, most of them are just like different types of wings. Then your mount skins, and then you can also dye these, right? So like if I do the plush raptor, then I go to dyes and I click on the mount. Then let's make my raptor just all purple. Giving a bit of variation. Oh, what colors are Barney? But yeah, so you can dye your mounts, right? I can dye my Warhound purple. Dye that purple. But yeah, so you have your mounts. I actually like the primeval stuff. The primeval mounts are my favorite type. With like, I wonder if this one has the primeval. I'm not seeing one that looks like primeval. A lot of Warcraft. Whoa, this one looks sick. I wish I had that one. I really like this bat mount, honestly. But yeah, I like primeval, and then this one doesn't have a primeval. This dark monarch is kind of sick too.
I didn't see you there.
Doesn't look like that one has a primeval. But yeah, when I also just like do the default dyes on all the primeval ones, and it kind of like matches my kind of like the spectral kind of aesthetic, because I have like infusions, and that's what's making my like skin the way it is my infusions. But yeah, I kind of like that like kind of spectral look. But yeah, so that's mounts. You can dye them. Fishing, honestly, don't know much about. Skiffs. This is your like little boat that you can have. When you're fishing in the third expansion. Novelties. So novelties are like chairs, right? Like so, novelties are just like fun little gadgets and stuff. So this is a raid chair. This is a raid chair. This is a raid chair. And then this is like 10th anniversary. Like if your account was older. And then there's some. This was in the latest bundle, and these were from Black Lion chests. I don't have like a lot of chairs, just because very rarely use them. These musical things. Okay, so I have to figure out where my novelty is. Fudge. Because
I think I switched the keybind for it. But basically, okay, well, I'll just use the spell. You can play music. Basically, like, you can play notes, and then you can switch, like, your tune, like, low octave, middle octave, like, so there's actually, like, if you look up on YouTube, there's actually, like, some videos of people playing, like, full concerts just with the musical instruments in the game. It's pretty cool. But that's the novelties. There's, like, little toys and stuff. This is one that I like, which is, it just gives me, like, a little halo, so I, like, have a double halo here. But before I got this, like, actual halo cosmetic, it was cooler, but yeah. I have to figure out how to turn that novelty off, but that's the novelties. I could just switch this to, like, a pirate sword, or and then it goes away. But yeah, then these are tonics that change you into stuff. It's kind of fun. But yeah, it's kind of fun. But yeah, there's a hotkey. I don't know what my novelty hotkey is, but that lets you use. Oh, actually, I think it's down here. So yeah, the tonics are cool. They basically just turn you into stuff, and then you can still, like, fight. Well, like, I can still fight as this watch knight, which is pretty fun. But yeah, it's just like little toys. What else? Miniatures. Miniatures are miniatures. I think they're pretty self-explanatory, right? Like, I can have a little Koss, or, like, a little blue Shiba Inu. Usually I just, like, I have a favorite raid boss, and that's usually the one I have out. Here's a bunch of the raid bosses. So Doom, Desmina, well, actually, kind of spoilers, but Orcival is my favorite one. Oh, you can even see, yeah, this guy. I love this guy. He's just, like, so cool looking, like, eldritch horror kind of dude. But you can even see the Veil Guardians that I was fighting earlier. Those little spirit dudes. But yeah, that's minis, pretty straightforward. Finishers. So this is when in PvP or WW, when you kill someone. Actually, you might have even seen when that dude ganked me earlier. Basically, when you're in a down state, you can charge up an attack and, like, take someone that way. And there's different ones. So this one's kind of like one of my, like, one of the ones I like better. It's like Avatar of Strength. And then mail carriers. When you send or receive mail, this animation actually plays. I think it's lost a lot of time. People don't really notice it, so it's whatever. Builds, I think, pretty straightforward, right? You know, there's optimal variations of these. One of them is always going to be your elite spec, so one of them is always going to be Berserker, or Bladesworn, or Spellbreaker. And then the other one's just based on, like, if you're damage over time or burst damage, you'll choose different ones. And obviously, you know, you can, these are old builds that I've saved for other stuff. But yeah, you can look up guides for that. Training, also, like, once you max this out, you're never really going to look at this tab anymore. Story journal, yeah, basically where you are in the story. Oh, has this character not completed the core story? That's kind of funny. Yeah, like, once you complete the story once, you don't really need to complete it on other characters as long as you can level. So, like, one way you can level, obviously you have the boost, right? But, like, another way is, like, when you do, like, PvP and WW, you get these things called Tomes of Knowledge, and they basically just give you one free level. I think you can also get them from Black Lion Chest and stuff, and maybe other rewards, but they basically just give you one free level. What else? Yeah, okay, so that's Hero, pretty straightforward. It's just a summary of like, what's happened, basically, in the story. If you just, like, need a recap, you come back from a while. Crafting, again, like, all the disciples. Oh, okay, so I'm only Chef and Artificer on this one. Usually I, like, pick two, but, like, I have all of them. One of my characters, I think my Guardian has everything maxed here. Achievements, also pretty straightforward. I mean, there's, like, a lot of stuff. It helps you find where your mastery points are, because your mastery point system is actually the last thing on this list. Once you hit 80, you're gonna stop having like a level. You have a mastery, and basically what these are, what the mastery system is, are like features to the game that you can get. And so, like, this one is basically all about, like, open world metas and stuff. This one's about legendary crafting better stuff. and then this one is about fractals, which is like the Mythic Plus dungeons I was talking about, right? And so basically, if the expansions didn't exist, right, my mastery rank would be these pips added up. So it would be 6, 11, 12, 15, 21, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 30, 36, 41, 2, 4, 6, 8. It'd be 49 actually, which is kind of an odd number, but that's what, like, when the mastery system came out, if the expansions weren't out, my mastery rank would be 41, right? Similarly, Heart of Thorns, I could add those all up. I've completed all the Heart of Thorns ones. I've completed all the Path of Fire ones. I am stuck on this Ice Brute. Ice Brute Saga is basically like the living world between expansions, between Heart of Thorns and End of Dragons. And I'm just kind of stuck on this one. I still need to get some more mastery points. I still need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I need 17 more. These are a lot harder to get. These are a pain. The Ice Brute Saga ones are really actually difficult to get. So I told myself I wanted to max my rank before I started this expansion, but I kind of underestimated how fucking annoying these are to get. So yeah, I barely started the third expansion, and then obviously this one, the last expansion actually came out August of last year, so it's only been out almost a year now. Very quick. I'm not sure how many mastery points you can get in there, but you can see, like, if you look at other people, you can see this person's like 543. I think it's a good way, like, usually if I'm in the raid arena and I just like click on people, usually I'll start to see, like, yeah. So usually if I like see the same number a couple times, I can kind of figure out like that's the max master rank. So 543. I think I saw another 543. 536. 227. 543. Yeah, I'm gonna assume 543 is like kind of the max mastery rank you could be right now. But yeah, that's that. I think it's pretty straightforward once you get into it. Once you're in the expansion, you might have to make choices about which ones you get, right? Because gliding's pretty important, right? These things are important for farming and doing metas, like the one I was doing. That's pretty important. And then raids. There's obviously like a raid one too. The raid one, yeah. So I think, yeah. So actually, yeah. So it's a good idea to have at least Heart of Thorns before you start raiding, because having some of this is pretty important. What else? So that was the hero tab. Inventory. I think inventory is pretty straightforward. I mean, you can have bags, things to explore, like the options. Like you can show the individual bags, or you just hide it and it all becomes like one big bag. You can compact. You can deposit. You can have what are called hidden bags. So these two bags are hidden bags. So like when I do compact or deposit, or if I'm trading with a vendor, these items that are in these bottom bags here won't show up, which is pretty important. You can search. So like one thing I do is like if you search consumable, everything that you can like eat will be there. So like usually if you're like opening a bunch of bags, you just type consumable, and then you'll only see the consumables. Kind of helps make things a little bit more easy on the eyes. There's a use all button, right? You can destroy stuff. You can eat this luck. Open all these bags. Open all these bags. A lot of this is food and stuff. Yeah. And then, compact. I can deposit. I can salvage all. These are pretty cool. Like, there's a couple like quality of life things that you can buy, or like you save up the gold and then you can turn the gold into gems, right? I think having at least one like endless salvaging item is pretty good, and I think having the teleport to friend, which apparently now is on like a 10-minute cooldown. It used to be on a 2-hour cooldown, so teleport to friend, this recharging one is huge. If it's here, and I think it's like 800 gems, which is yeah, recharging teleport to friend. it's about $10. But also you can save up gold, and you can, so 337 gold is 800 gems. So that's the other thing. Nothing in the game is pay to win, because everything in the game you can, like, I mean, okay, so also, like, nothing you can buy will increase your power or your skill level. So that's the only thing. It's mainly quality of life things, like the like endless salvaging things, or the teleport a friend is basically quality of life things. You don't need it for anything specific. And then on top of that, yeah, you can't buy best in slot gear, right? And most people have to work for a legendary, especially legendary armor. So yeah. Then you have mail, your guild tab. So guild tab, right? So clicking this will make your see how people have XXX in brackets? That's their guild. So when you click one of these, that'll display your guild code. Then you have the roster for your guild. Missions, be fun to do some of these. Some of these are like scavenger hunts. Some of these are like play PvP. Some of them are like little games, like races. Races are really fun. There's some cool races here where you basically like race everyone. And then you can set up teams for PvP. This is storage for decorating. And then there's a history and then ranks. But yeah, important thing is to make sure you're repping, and then eventually guild missions are kind of fun. W-Dub, it's kind of a self-contained thing. Like I said, there's the reward track. Your rank abilities. So this is just like your rank, and then you can get different abilities to use while you're in W-Dub. PvP, again, there's the same kind of system with the leagues and then the reward tracks. There's also tournaments where you can get some pretty crazy rewards. So here, like, if you win the monthly tournament, you're gonna get like a crown, kind of like the Halo I was showing earlier. That's a novelty, but only the winners are gonna get this champion's crown, right? That's huge. And then you get 100 Mystic Coins, 500 gold. You get access to an exclusive lobby, which is a place you can just hang out. Oh, and then usually in the lobbies, you have access to all the crafting things, banks, merchants. They're really close together. So it just makes it easier versus like when you're in a big city running around between the crafting stations, between the bank and everything. Usually, sorry, I said lobby. These are like lounges, like lounge areas, like exclusive lounge areas. Sometimes permanent versions of these are sold in the shop. Sometimes you get them when you pre-order an expansion. So there was one for Heart of Thorns. There was one for Path to Fire. Path to Fire. But yeah, the third expansion. I don't think there was the Secrets of the Obscura one. But yeah, they're kind of just like little areas where you have access to everything. I was in here earlier when I use this one the most because it has quick access to the fractal lobby. The only other place to access fractals, like by walking into them, is in Lion's Arch, is where the actual like fractal portal is. But there's one inside this lounge, so this is just the lounge that I got used to using the most. But yeah, so like when you're in the lounge, you can see like there's the bank, the trading post over here. The bank and the trading post, and then there's crafting, and there's the fractal lobby, and then there's also some fractal vendors here, and then this is just like in general kind of like a cool lounge, just because it's like this is like the fractals, like this is like the aesthetic actually, which is kind of like that. It's like spacey, I guess. I don't know. It's just kind of like a alternate dimension, kind of like on the edge, like a tear in the fabric of reality. And then this is all like Azura tech, because the Azurans are like the scientists and stuff that are like exploring the fractals and stuff. What else? Yeah, your dailies. Dailies used to be different, but now, you know, here you can see what you need to do. Oh, I need to defeat 2 more enemies, and I get my dailies, the weeklies. And then Guild Wars stole this from World of Warcraft, but there's like a monthly kind of like you can spend your daily points and stuff to buy cosmetics and stuff. And then last but not least is the Black Lion trading post. Mostly just cosmetics, like some utility items. Unbreakable gathering tools are pretty nice, I would say. There's one-use items for bank access and stuff, but you know, I wouldn't ever spend money on that. Like, I mean, that's however much money that is, probably like 50 cents, and it's like one-time access to your bank. But yeah, and then trading posts, and then currency exchange. You know, dyes. You can buy dyes, bags, etc., etc. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Just like a quick rundown of kind of like the very basics. I'm sure I missed stuff. And I'm sure there's a lot more to talk about, but hopefully that gives like a good idea of everything, all the main features in the game, and kind of